Though Songbek acknowledges Chung Myung's superiority in martial arts, he remains perplexed by the circumstances of their previous encounter, suspecting trickery on Chung Myung's part. Chung Myung, however, assures him that this time he will deeply regret his decision. Chung Myung contemplates the significant age difference between himself and Songbek, who belongs to a generation younger. Despite this, Songbek experiences an unexplainable sense of dread while facing Chung Myung, as if confronting a formidable adversary. Chung Myung, in turn, admires Songbek's unwavering defensive stance, reminiscent of a fearless encounter with a tiger. Songbek initiates the fight with the Jongnan sect's new martial art, the 12 movements no flower swords, demonstrating remarkable bravery. However, his valiant efforts result in severe injuries. This incites Chung Myung's anger, leading him to inquire about Songbek's knowledge of this particular sword art. Songbek, with a hint of trepidation, admits that he can deceive everyone except Chung Myung, as this sword art embodies the essence of Manhwa, specifically the strokes of the 24-movement plum blossom sword technique. He further reveals that this technique has been lost even within the Manhwa sect. Songbek grapples with an overwhelming sense of dread, likening his experience to facing a demon. He awakens in a room with Chung Myung by his side, who reassures him of his impending recovery. Chung Myung inquires about the origin of Songbek's 12-stroke snowflower sword, wondering if it is a creation of the Jongnan sect. Songbek confides that the general belief is that the Manhwa sect would not recognize it if they openly used it. He divulges that only the first-class and second-class disciples are privy to this sword art's existence, and the mastermind behind its development remains within the Jongnan sect, shrouded in secrecy. Before we continue, take a moment to answer the question of the day. What's your favorite cultivation manhwa? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out. Now, back to the recap. In the distant past, when the Manhwa sect faced a devastating invasion by the Heavenly Demon sect, the majority of its members found themselves utterly defenseless. They were mercilessly obliterated amidst the vast and unforgiving mountains. The survivors of the Manhwa sect were but children at the time, caught in a dire predicament. It was during this dark era that the heroes of the Jongnan sect came to the aid of the beleaguered Mount Hwasek community. The heroes of the Jongnan sect could not stand idly by while a neighboring sect was under attack by the malevolent Heavenly Demon sect, fearing criticism from the Yonko if they did nothing. However, the irony lay in the fact that their assistance was not entirely altruistic. In their supposed act of benevolence, they surreptitiously absconded with the martial arts manuals of Mount Hua, a fact known to only a few. Compounding the complexity of the situation, it was not even the Heavenly Demon sect that had set the Mount Hua sect on fire. This revelation left Chung Myung deeply perturbed, and he sternly forbade Songbek from pursuing the mastery of this particular martial art. Doubt and self-reflection consumed Songbek's thoughts as he contemplated the possibility of being inadvertently implicated in the sect's tragic past. He couldn't help but consider himself a potential catalyst for the incident, given his ability to easily defeat members of the Jongnan sect. He regarded them as foolish and believed that if he were part of the Jongnan sect, he would invoke the Supreme Sword, the ultimate authority. In his counsel to Songbek, he stressed the need for personal growth and the urgency to become stronger swiftly to exact revenge. Songbek believed that instead of antagonizing them, the people of the Jongnan sect should be grateful for their aid. They needed to recognize the cost they might have to pay for their misguided actions. Meanwhile, Hyun Young expressed concern about the absence of Chung Myung, who had not been seen for 7 days. He found this prolonged absence unacceptable, particularly for a third-class disciple who had not sought permission. However, news soon arrived that Chung Myung was about to return to the Mount Hua sect. The sect leader hurried outside to welcome him, though Hyun Young pondered the importance of not overly indulging the young disciple. He believed in a balanced approach that included both rewards and punishments, ensuring the proper upbringing of disciples. If a disciple received no punishment despite their wrongdoings, they would remain oblivious to their mistakes. The sect leader reassured everyone that he had the utmost desire to see Chung Myung grow into an upright individual. Ungum proposed a solution, suggesting that Chung Myung should be confined to the Repentance Building for a minimum of 6 months as a form of disciplinary action. The consensus among the assembly was unanimous, and they all agreed that this was a fitting course of action. Just as they were deliberating, Chung Myung made his entrance and respectfully greeted the sect leader. Questions were directed at him regarding the valid reason for his actions, emphasizing that a failure to provide a reasonable explanation would result in appropriate punishment. In response, sect leader humbly requested that they refrain from reprimanding the child. Surprisingly, Sir Huang appeared on the scene, catching everyone off guard. He shared the revelation that Chung Myung had saved his life by curing him of a poisoning inflicted by the rare 5-implant toxin, for which the remedy was ground radish. The assembly proposed rewarding Chung Myung for this noble act, and sect leader expressed his appreciation for the blessings Chung Myung had brought to the sect. Sir Huang then disclosed his intention to express gratitude on behalf of the Yunhua Merchant Guild by investing in the Manhwa sect. He expressed his willingness to dedicate all of his assets to the sect's development. The sect leader welcomed this gesture with enthusiasm. Furthermore, Sir Huang declared that he would oversee the sect's business affairs from that point onward, but laid down 2 conditions. Firstly, they were to utilize the earnings for the betterment of the Manhwa sect, rather than accumulating wealth. Secondly, they were to show favor towards the third-class disciple, Chung Myung. Sect leader suggested teaching Chung Myung a secret martial arts manual, but Hyun Young opposed the idea. Sect leader was taken aback by Hyun's unexpected behavior, only to later learn that Hyun was grateful to Chung Myung, as this support would enable him to cover his monthly necessities with some money left over. Payon proposed that they continue sending Chung Myung out on missions to garner more achievements, suggesting they could bestow upon him the coveted Plum Blossom Sword or allow him to choose from the library's offerings. Sir Huang believed that the Yunhua Merchant Guild stood to benefit from supporting the Manhwa sect, but he also hinted at the enmity he had garnered with the Zhongnan sect as a result of his actions. Chung Myung was well aware that Hyun was taking advantage of him, but he couldn't help but acknowledge that the world was a treacherous place, filled with all sorts of hidden threats and challenges. With a sense of caution, he approached Hyun and asked him to help uncover some information. Hyun, however, was not confident in his ability to decipher Chung's intentions and thoughts. It was revealed that the Manhwa sect was known as the Dragon's Lair because a dragon once resided within the sect, long before anyone paid it any attention. Chung Myung recognized the potential significance of this information, realizing that it could be instrumental in elevating the Yunhua Merchant Guild to become the world's foremost merchant guild. Huang, understanding the importance of the task at hand, shared his plans with his son, Hyun Jong-hui, and they began strategizing. As Master Huang departed from the Manhwa sect, Chung Myung considered him a wise man. Master Huang had spent his life navigating the complexities of the business world, engaging in negotiations and disputes. His efforts had successfully removed the formidable obstacle of poverty, which had hindered the Manhwa sect's resurgence for years. While the Yunhua Merchant Guild wielded considerable power, none of the Manhwa sect's disciples had managed to achieve such rapid stability in the business realm. Meanwhile, Master Huang Young, the leader of the finance and economy agencies, maintained a perpetual smile as the situation within the Manhwa sect remained tranquil, much like the unbroken flow of water. During this period, Chung Myung diligently participated in training sessions with other disciples, taking a keen interest in their physical and martial development. The disciples were becoming more powerful and healthier as a result. Ungum pondered the location of Chung Myung's training sessions as he was frequently seen visiting the Yunhua Merchant Guild. Unbeknownst to him, Chung Myung was engaged in rigorous training, striving to master the art of unifying body and sword. During one of his training sessions, he noticed another individual practicing nearby. This person was a twilight beauty, her graceful sword dance reminiscent of a blooming plum blossom under the moonlight. Intrigued by the sight, Chung Myung approached her and inquired about her identity. The girl recognized him by his uniform and questioned whether a third-class disciple was allowed to leave the sect after sunset. Chung Myung assured her that he had obtained permission from the sect leader. She introduced herself as Iseol Yu, a second-class disciple, and considered herself Chung Myung's senior in rank within the sect. The moonlit encounter left Chung Myung with a sense of admiration for the skilled swordswoman. As the sun began to rise, Iseol Yu urged Chung Myung to depart, and also prohibited him from occupying someone else's training ground. Chung Myung understood the necessity of finding a new training spot, and he set out on his search. Meanwhile, Chung Myung received word that their senior disciples were returning to the Manhwa sect, and they harbored dissatisfaction with the current state of affairs. It was revealed that they had left the sect to engage in their own secluded training sessions due to the inadequate maintenance of the training facilities at Manhwa. Additionally, Chung Myung learned about an upcoming martial arts competition between the Manhwa sect and the Zhongnan sect, an annual event to showcase each sect's progress over the past year. It was further disclosed that the Manhwa disciples had consistently suffered defeats at the hands of their Zhongnan counterparts during these competitions. If they were to fail once more, their senior members and elders would face considerable embarrassment. In response to this, Chung Myung assured the others that this time they would not let their people down. The sect leader also shared his concerns about the approaching competition. However, he recognized that avoiding the situation would only lead to the perception of cowardice from the Jongnan sect. Therefore, he ordered the preparation of sumptuous meals and alcohol for the senior students. Chung Myung considered Jeol as a formidable contender who could potentially win in the competition. He also believed that Yun Jong would benefit from a less challenging opponent. To prepare their disciples for the upcoming event, Chung Myung altered their training methods drastically. In the middle of the night, he assembled all the disciples and emphasized the importance of either winning or giving their all, even if it meant risking their lives. He motivated them, reminding them of their strength and the quality of their training, and urged them not to underestimate their chances against the Jongnan sect. Chung Myung encouraged the disciples to believe in their abilities and not concede defeat without a fight. While he acknowledged that Yun Jong might need some luck on his side, he remained optimistic. During the training, Jeol launched an attack on Chung Myung, but he was unable to land a single blow. Chung Myung was impressed by Yun Jong's talent and his proficient swordplay. He dodged Jeol's attacks effortlessly, recognizing the precision with which Jeol utilized the sword kiai. During the rigorous training session, Chung Myung posed a question to Jeol, inquiring about the sensation of nearing death and advising him to take a well-deserved rest. He then proceeded to launch attacks on all the senior brothers, but none were able to block his swift and powerful strikes, causing them to fall to the ground in defeat. Jeol explained that this was due to Chung Myung's exceptional speed and strength, which made it nearly impossible to defend against his attacks, even if they anticipated them. Recognizing the need for a change in approach, Chung Myung began sharing valuable fighting skills with the disciples. He conveyed the message that instead of pursuing complex and intricate sword techniques clumsily, it was more beneficial to first develop a solid physical foundation and use that as a basis for simple and effective swordplay. He emphasized that mastering fundamental techniques, like the six-fold combo sword technique, which was a cornerstone of the Manhwa sect, would enable them to eventually employ more advanced techniques, such as the falling petal sword and the Ursa major steps. Chung Myung encouraged them to learn how to use their existing knowledge freely and assured them that victory was the ultimate goal in combat. He ordered them to commence training by performing 10,000 sword swings. The sect leader, observing Chung Myung's unorthodox training methods, likened him to the type of person who believed that if you beat a dog enough times, it would eventually learn to perform handstands. Despite the unconventional approach, Chung Myung was resolute in his mission to train the disciples and transform the Manhwa sect into a formidable force that could thrive even in his absence. He aspired to become the strongest individual in the world, surpassing his past self and even the formidable heavenly demon. However, he knew that discovering his own unique sword art to achieve this goal would be a challenging endeavor. Unexpectedly, Iseol Yu appeared, seemingly unnoticed by Chung Myung, prompting him to wonder if she had mastered assassin techniques, which made her presence undetectable. She had overheard their conversation about the plum blossom sword technique, leaving Chung Myung feeling uneasy about his actions and possible consequences. She was now the sole witness to his training methods. The senior brothers, distinguished by their sect uniforms adorned with a plum blossom pattern on their chests, had arrived. They inquired about Iseol Yu and learned that she may have preceded them to Manhwa, driven by her independent nature. The disciples were served food and alcohol, and the senior brother graciously announced that he would cover the expenses, inviting them to enjoy their drinks without restraint. Chung Myung and the others expressed gratitude for his dedicated leadership, acknowledging that they had simply followed in his footsteps. Chung Myung marveled at the senior brother's appearance, remarking that he resembled a legendary warrior. The senior brother generously assured them that they could drink as much as they desired, creating an atmosphere of camaraderie and celebration among them. As Chung Myung observed the arrival of the senior brothers from the Jongnan sect, he couldn't help but feel that the gap between the Manhwa sect and their counterparts had grown significantly. It had reached a point where any comparison seemed futile. Despite their relentless efforts, the disciples of the Manhwa sect were acutely aware that their dedication might not be enough to bridge this formidable divide. They remained resolute in their belief that their hard work would ultimately prove to be their unwavering ally in times of need. One of the senior brothers noticed Chung Myung, a young boy who appeared to be barely 15 years old, ordering expensive dishes and partaking in alcohol. This unexpected sight prompted curiosity, and the senior brother inquired about Chung Myung's sect and name. Chung Myung, however, played it down, claiming to be a mere passerby, and urged them to continue their meal. The senior brother, seeking a friendly introduction, persisted in trying to engage with Chung Myung. Irritated by the persistence, Chung Myung concealed his face and questioned why the senior brother was being so amiable. He suggested that the senior brother should attend to his official duties and abruptly departed from the scene. Chung Myung's sudden departure left the senior brother surprised, as he had witnessed Chung Myung evading his lockgrass technique without even seeing it. He speculated that perhaps his hand had slipped, prompting the young boy to make a hasty exit. Chung Myung, reflecting on his actions, regretted leaving before finishing his meal and laughed at himself, acknowledging the challenging path ahead to transform the group of disciples into proficient martial artists. Upon reuniting with Jeol, who was shocked to see that Chung Myung had consumed alcohol, Chung Myung explained that he had merely wanted to rest for a while, but had ended up falling asleep. Jeol informed him that their seniors were assembling and urged him to freshen up promptly. To Chung Myung's surprise, the scent of alcohol disappeared, and he inquired of Jeol how he could make such comments to a sacred and pure Taoist like himself. Chung Myung contemplated the actions of the senior brothers and concluded that they had likely ingested a pill while engaging in some minor swordplay, considering it a show of toughness. Jeol cautioned Chung Myung to exercise caution in his interactions with the seniors, particularly Senior Baek Cheon, who had a reputation for strictness. Jeol warned that if Chung Myung continued with his usual attitude, he might find himself facing punishment. As everyone gathered at the gate to welcome the senior brothers, the sect leader noticed a distinct change in the atmosphere. Chung Myung, acknowledging the senior brother's undeniable handsomeness, offered his own perspective on the matter. Baek Cheon, upon recognizing Chung Myung, approached him with a sense of familiarity. He inquired whether they had met before and asked when Chung Myung had joined the Manhwa sect. Jeol explained that Chung Myung had joined while they were all away for training, so it hadn't been long since his arrival, and they had not crossed paths earlier. Chung Myung then introduced himself. Baek Cheon assured Chung Myung that they would have ample opportunities to meet in the future, and suggested that he remember his name. Baek Cheon was renowned as the greatest genius of the Manhwa sect, the individual believed to hold the potential to revive the sect's glory. Chung Myung sensed a hidden flaw in this situation, while also noticing Iseol Yu's presence. He observed that she shared the Baek surname, implying a connection to Baek Cheon. Chung Myung believed that she would not divulge any information about him. Jeol disclosed that Senior Iseol Yu had already taken an interest in Senior Baek Cheon. As everyone paid their respects to the sect leader, Baek Cheon assured them that the training had not been too strenuous, as their sect had generously supported them, resulting in significant progress. The finance leader announced a celebratory party for their return, and the sect leader instructed him to assist the younger disciples in settling down and relaxing. Additionally, he summoned Chung Myung to his room. Bak inquired about Chung Myung from a senior, but the senior advised him to ignore Chung Myung's presence. The senior brothers were taken aback when they discovered chicken served as part of the meal, surprised to see junior students who had grown weary of meat. Bak was puzzled by the sudden change in the Manhwa sect's customs. It was revealed that a Golan had descended upon the Manhwa sect. Chung Myung entered the room in a state of agitation, leaving everyone wondering about the cause of his distress. They were curious as to why the third-class disciples did not reprimand the youngest boy, and even Ungam remained unusually silent, which was out of character for him. He sat alongside Yeonjong and Jeol, signifying his elevated power and status. Chung Myung was upset because he had been instructed to visit the Yunhwa Merchant Guild. Yeonjong demonstrated politeness when dealing with individuals of higher rank or older age, but it appeared that this did not apply to Baek Cheon. Baek's inquiry pertained to junior sister Yu, who had been present with them when they entered the canteen. Given their long-standing camaraderie, it was important to ensure that no one was left out during their gathering. They were already aware of the fact that she possessed an uncanny ability to remain elusive if she so desired. Bayek, typically composed in most situations, exhibited a stark contrast when it came to her. He became recklessly agitated. Abruptly, he left his seat at the table, but in a surprising twist, she materialized right before him. His demeanor swiftly shifted to one of jubilation as she gracefully entered the scene. Upon her arrival, she approached Chung Myung, inquiring if she could occupy the seat beside him. The suddenness of her request caught everyone off guard. However, Chung Myung sternly forbade her, expressing his disinterest in engaging with her in any way. Despite Bak's earnest pleas, Chung Myung remained resolute, stating that he had nothing to discuss with her. Undeterred, she extended an offer to wait for him until he finished his meal, but he firmly declined, citing a busy schedule. Bak couldn't help but speculate that Chung Myung had been assigned frequent missions by the sect. Chung Myung's brusque behavior further fueled Baek's frustration, prompting him to issue a warning about the consequences of losing one's temper. He implored her to apologize to their senior disciples for actions undertaken in their absence, and she duly complied. The atmosphere soon transformed into a jubilant celebration, led by Ungam. Baek, well aware of the strict rules governing the Manhwa sect, knew that leaving without informing anyone, especially as a third-class disciple, could lead to severe consequences. He confided in Ungam about spotting a third-class disciple, Chung Myung, wandering alone in Hua in personal attire, a breach of sect regulations. Bak expressed his desire to investigate the matter, but was astounded when Ungam seemed unperturbed by the breach. This departure from Ungam's usually rigid stance on rules left Baek perplexed. He inquired about the source of Chung Myung's authority, and Ungam pointed to the sect leader. Just then, the sect leader entered the canteen, and Baek respectfully greeted him. Baek took the opportunity to inquire about Chung's sudden disappearance, expressing his concerns. However, the sect leader disappointingly confirmed his awareness of the situation, but offered little insight. Baek couldn't help but wonder how a third-class disciple had committed such a serious offense by venturing alone for alcohol consumption. To his surprise, the sect leader justified the act, stating that it was customary for disciples to indulge in alcohol. He added that it was preferable that Chung Myung used his own funds for such indulgence, as his contributions also supported the sect and its students. The leader's fury escalated, and he sternly reprimanded the group, reminding them that they were not entitled to call themselves seniors among the second-class disciples. He went on to emphasize that they should express gratitude to their junior for earning the money that enabled them to have a meal. Baek found himself utterly bewildered by the situation, struggling to comprehend the unfolding events. He now understood why Yoon had approached Chung. In his eyes, this situation seemed unjust to the seniors of the Mount Hua sect. The sect had undergone a significant transformation, transitioning from a dilapidated state to one that had been newly established. At that moment, Baek saw himself as the last beacon of hope for the Mount Hua sect. He believed that he could still lead the sect back to its former glory. In pursuit of this goal, he suggested that they needed to teach Chung a lesson and investigate why the seniors were siding with him. Just then, Yoon entered the room, paying his respects to the seniors. They appreciated his efforts in looking after matters in their absence and shared their concerns about the current state of affairs within the sect. They felt that the recent developments were not in line with the values and principles of the sect. Yoon, acknowledging Chung's disruptive behavior, offered his apologies on Chung's behalf. Bak inquired about the events that had transpired during their absence, prompting Yoon to recount the moment when Baek had requested a private meeting with Chung. He cautioned Chung against going, warning that everything they had worked for would go to waste. Yoon was now torn, as he feared that revealing the details to the seniors might be seen as betraying Chung. As Yoon delved into Chung's history within the Mount Hua sect, shocking revelations came to light. Chung had discovered the sect's treasures and martial art books, regained control over their business ventures, and even cured Elder Twonk. The senior disciples were astounded by these accomplishments, realizing that Chung had resolved many of the sect's long-standing issues. However, Baek remained skeptical of Chung's contributions, believing that the sect should not favor a student solely for their ability to generate income. It became apparent that the most crucial aspect for the Mount Hua sect was martial arts. They surmised that as the elders became preoccupied with an upcoming conference, they would eventually return their attention to the third-class disciple, confident that the sect would ultimately revert to its traditional ways. As the story unfolds, it is revealed that the third-class disciples would also be participating in the upcoming conference, and the senior disciples decided to overlook their junior counterparts for the time being. Their aim was to teach Chung Myung a lesson, and Baek hoped that Chung Myung possessed martial arts talent as well. Yoon entered the room and noticed Chung Myung sleeping. He contemplated the change in Chung's behavior and wondered where his dignity had gone in dealing with Chung. They pondered who would emerge victorious if Baek and Chung Myung were to engage in a fight. Yoon began to see Chung as a problem, as he treated him like a friend, and Chung appeared oblivious to the tensions he had stirred. It seemed that peace within the Mount Hua sect was becoming increasingly elusive. Word reached the sect leader about the strained atmosphere between the second and third-class disciples. This tension was attributed to the minimal age difference between the two groups, particularly for those who were of the same age. The sect leader explained that their sect had traditionally been selective in choosing disciples, but had been forced to accept children supported by their families due to financial difficulties. This age gap had created a sense of non-competition among the students, leading to the current discord. Ungum believed that the third-class disciples weren't doing anything to provoke the second-class disciples, but the sect leader felt that Yoon and Yoonjong had better chances of rising since they were closely associated with Chum. He expressed the belief that the second-class disciples sent for training had not imparted much knowledge to their third-class counterparts. The clashes between the two groups were seen as a result of human nature. The sect leader advised Ungum to trust the students and suggested that Beek would resolve matters soon. The following day, students pleaded for mercy, explaining that they were exhausted. Chung encouraged them, likening them to iron that grows stronger through tough forging. However, senior disciples suddenly appeared and demanded that the students rise, believing they were relaxing when the conference was approaching. All the juniors were given the punishment of cleaning the sect, leaving them baffled by the sudden change in their seniors' behavior. Yoonjong noted that Chung seemed to have no recollection of the previous night. The senior disciples had imposed numerous rules related to walking, drinking, and other activities, essentially subjecting the juniors to harassment by enforcing old regulations. One such rule required juniors to carry their swords even while bathing, eating, and sleeping, adding to the growing tension within the sect. During a tense moment, the senior disciples approached Chung and asked him to do something. In response, Chung suggested a rather drastic course of action, declaring his intention to confront and beat up all the senior disciples. Panic ensued as all the students rushed to catch him, but Chung's speed made it nearly impossible to apprehend him. Eventually, they managed to restrain him and attempted to convince him not to engage in a fight with the senior disciples. Chung relented, partly due to Yoon's extensive efforts in mediating the situation. However, he remained intrigued by the idea that if the seniors were to fight among themselves, he could act without restraint, a prospect that pleased him greatly. Beck couldn't help but wonder why Chung showed no visible reaction, as they had been trying to provoke him to some extent in order to control him and prevent any future rebellions. Bach inquired about the other third-class disciples and found no issues with them. Realizing that time was running out before the conference, they decided to focus on preparations. Bayek advocated for leniency towards some of the third-class disciples who were not as problematic, emphasizing that the main issue was Chung Myung. As night fell, Chung Myung secretly set off somewhere, determined not to be caught again. He had been discovered twice already, but was determined to evade capture a third time. He attributed all these problems to Beck and wished he could turn everything upside down. However, he held back, largely due to his resemblance to Yoonjong, who always wore a helpless and frustrated expression whenever trouble arose. Chung felt guilty for causing Yoonjong distress, but vowed to maintain his composure until the conference concluded. During his training, Chung sensed the presence of someone nearby. Even though no one was visibly present, he remained vigilant. Aware that Yoonjong was constantly watching him, Yoonjong struggled to control her impulses, especially when Chung interacted with the other third-class disciples. Whenever Lee Seol-yu found Chung Myung alone, she would persistently engage him in conversation, attempting to strike up a dialogue. In his 80 years of life, Chung had never encountered someone as strikingly beautiful as her. Unexpectedly, she appeared before him one day, startling Chung and causing him to shout at her. He admonished her for not announcing her presence before approaching, explaining that she had genuinely frightened him. However, she rebuked him, demanding respect as his senior. Curious about her intentions, Chung inquired why she was following him. She surprised him by asking about a sword technique. Chung confessed that he had no knowledge of such a technique. To his astonishment, she then implored him to teach her the technique. Chung had anticipated that she would ask about martial arts outside the Manhwa sect, and he suspected her motives. Attempting to manipulate him, she threatened to inform the sect leader about their interaction. However, Chung remained skeptical, believing that nobody would believe that a new disciple like him possessed the ability to use a sword technique that filled the skies with plum blossoms. He reminded her that he was her junior, and it was unconventional for a junior to teach a senior. Lee Seol-yu claimed to have seen the technique before, further fueling Chung's suspicion. He reasoned that all the elders of the Manhwa sect who held knowledge of the technique had perished on the battlefield without passing it on to anyone. Her assertion hinted at a connection to the Jongnan sect, but she was taken aback when Chung mentioned this. She questioned why he had brought up the Jongnan sect, and he questioned how she could feign ignorance so convincingly. In response, she drew her sword, intent on teaching him a lesson. Chung marveled at her swift and nimble movements, noting her adeptness at covering her opponent's vulnerabilities. He questioned her sanity, wondering why a senior would engage a junior in a real sword fight. She explained that she believed she was stronger than him, and launched another attack. Chung was taken aback by her relentless strikes, and realized that she wasn't related to the Jongnan sect. He refrained from retaliating, fearing he would become a villain if he struck back. Instead, he focused on defending himself against her skilled attacks, perplexed by her unusual behavior and motivations. As Chung Myung continued his tense encounter with Lee Seol-yu, he issued a warning, urging her not to approach him with the intent to kill. He was shocked to observe that her pupils were dilated, a clear sign that she was in a state of sword drunkenness. It appeared that she had fallen into a trance-like state, each move executed with lethal precision as she sought her sword's path. Chung contemplated his strategy, thinking he should approach her indirectly from the sides. He acknowledged that among the disciples of the Manhwa sect, Seol-yu was considered the most talented with a sword, but even he couldn't compare to Yunjong's skill. Unbeknownst to them, Baek observed the confrontation from the sidelines, curious about their actions. Chung recognized that Yunjong was gradually improving, albeit temporarily, while still in her trance. Baek interrupted their encounter, drawing his sword and launching an attack on Chung. Despite Chung's attempts to defend himself, the situation became dangerous as Baek employed a sword technique called Ki. Before we continue, let's take a moment to shout out at Spontaneous Weirdo 5928, who commented, "Let's go, you made a part 3 on our Divine Surgeon video. Thanks for commenting." Chung moved closer to Yunjong, realizing the importance of this moment for her as a martial artist, given her trance-like state. He believed that the blast from the explosion could potentially awaken her from her current condition. Confused by Baek's aggressive actions, he inquired about why Baek had pulled his sword and attacked him, emphasizing the significance of such moments of enlightenment in martial arts. Baek retorted, claiming that he had merely attempted to kill Chung by using the sword Ki technique. Chung urged him to lower his sword, expressing his desire to engage in a fight not as a senior or junior, but as martial artists. He believed that Yunjong had the potential to lead the Manhwa sect, and this encounter could be instrumental in unlocking her true capabilities. Despite their positions as senior and junior, Chung was determined to resolve their differences through combat. Baek attempted to warn Chung that there was no one in the mountains who could come to his aid. However, Chung countered by stating that there was no one present who could protect Baek from him. Chung proposed an alternative solution, suggesting that they keep the current situation confidential and engage in a battle without the constraints of their senior-junior relationship, aiming to resolve their differences through martial skill rather than hierarchy. Baek agreed to Chung's idea, acknowledging that in this sparring match, he would not be his senior, rather, Chung would be his junior. During the fight, Baek intended to let go of all animosity towards Chung, but considered himself somewhat crazy for engaging in a fight with someone who had joined the sect just half a year ago. The fight commenced, and Baek employed the illusion sword technique, causing the sword's movements to appear clumsy. Chung recognized that this style was reminiscent of the Jongnan sect's approach to righteousness, implying that Baek might be attempting to imitate the Manhwa sect's illusion sword. Chung found Baek's efforts pathetic. Baek confidently declared his intention to teach Chung a lesson, but his bravado was short-lived. Chung delivered a powerful punch to Baek's face, sending him tumbling to the ground. Baek was shocked by how effortlessly Chung had countered his sword technique, a style he had heavily relied upon. Chung explained that the lack of weaknesses in Baek's technique had remained undiscovered because he had faced opponents as inept as himself. He questioned Baek if there was something wrong with his sword technique. Chung emphasized that while he might currently be slightly ahead of his peers, his juniors would soon catch up to him. He also expressed his desire to beat Baek, but as a precious disciple of the sect, he would do so in a manner that helped Baek grow. This meant he would defeat him with his sword, not his fists. Chung proceeded to skillfully best Baek, who found himself unable to keep up with Chung's prowess. After the match, Baek inquired how Chung had become so strong, noting that he had shouted 5 times but received 6 blows. Chung replied that it was not a matter of his own strength, but rather Baek's weakness, emphasizing that he knew how to confront reality and adapt, even in the face of absurd situations. What will happen next? Find out next time by staying tuned for our future recaps. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great recaps.